Okay, let's dive in. We've got this collection of sources all pointing towards one specific challenge, really. Setting up a business in Massachusetts, an LLC, a corporation, when you actually don't live there. And a huge piece of this, based on what you've gathered, is this thing called a registered agent.
Mm-hmm.
So the mission for this deep dive, let's unpack these materials, figure out what this registered agent is, why Massachusetts makes such a big deal about it, and importantly, how someone living outside the state actually handles this requirement, without running into big problems.
Yeah. And as you probably saw digging through that stuff, this isn't just some minor bit of paperwork. Getting the registered agent part right. It's fundamental. The documents make it clear messing this up can seriously hurt, maybe even stop your business operations in Massachusetts.
Absolutely. It sounds simple, it doesn't address right. But the sources suggest the stakes are, surprisingly high. It's definitely more than just where your mail goes. Let's see what the details are. So first things first. The sources really hammer this point. Massachusetts requires pretty much every registered business, LLCs, C-Corp, S-Corp, nonprofits, even companies from other states expanding into MA. They all need to have a registered agent. What exactly is that role based on the material?
Okay, so the sources define the registered agent as basically your business's official legal contact person within Massachusetts.
Right.
Think of them as the designated recipient for anything official from the state or, legal actions. It could be a person living there or another company authorized to do business in MA.
Okay, an official contact.
But here's the kicker, the absolute non-negotiable point that comes up again and again in your sources. This agent has to have a physical street address in Massachusetts.
A physical street address?
Yes. Not a P.O. box. It needs to be a real place where someone can actually be found.
Found for what, exactly? What are their main responsibilities according to these documents?
The materials list out specific duties. Number 1, the agent needs to be physically present at that Massachusetts address during normal business hours.
Standard business hours, like 9 to 5?
Generally, yeah. Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And their main job during that time, receiving important documents for your business. This is the really crucial part.
Important documents like?
Well, the sources specifically mention service of process. That's the legal term for receiving things like lawsuit notifications, subpoenas, serious legal papers. They also get official mail from state agencies, things like reminders to file your annual report, tax notices, that sort of thing.
So any official notice, whether it's from a court or the state government, goes straight to this registered agent at that specific physical address.
Precisely. And once they get it, the sources are clear. They have a legal duty to let you know promptly and to forward those documents to you quickly. They're essentially your legally recognized inbox for critical communications in Massachusetts.
Okay, the official receiver for the important stuff. Makes sense. But like we said, this sounds particularly tough if you're not based in Massachusetts. So what happens if you don't have a valid agent? Or maybe the one you picked moves or just isn't available? What do the sources say about the consequences?
Right, and this is where the sources get pretty stark. The penalties aren't minor, they're serious. One of the biggest ones, especially for a business trying to operate, is something called administrative dissolution.
Administrative dissolution. Okay, what does that actually mean for the business?
It means the state government, specifically the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, can basically just revoke your company's permission to operate legally in Massachusetts.
Wow, just like that.
Just like that. If you don't maintain that registered agent, or if official mail sent to them goes unanswered, the state can legally shut down your right to do business there. And it's not just administrative headaches. Think about those legal documents. If your agent misses receiving a lawsuit notice or a court summons,
you wouldn't even know you were being sued.
Exactly. You could completely miss deadlines to respond or even miss court dates. And that, the sources warn, can easily lead to default judgments against your business.
A default judgment.
Yeah.
So you lose the case automatically just because the notice never reached you properly.
That's the risk. Losing by forfeit, essentially. Plus, the sources also talk about fines and financial penalties the state can impose just for failing to have that proper agent in place or not keeping their info updated.
Fines on top of everything else.
And there was a statistic in the materials that really jumped out. It suggested thousands of businesses nationwide face dissolution or penalties every single year because of registered agent problems.
Thousands annually, just from this.
It really underscores how common this issue is and how damaging it can be, especially, for smaller businesses that might not have a big legal team watching this stuff.
That statistic really puts it in perspective,
Yeah.
and it perfectly sets up the core challenge your sources are tackling. If you're outside Massachusetts, how on earth do you meet that requirement? A physical address, someone there 9 to 5, reliably catching these critical documents.
That is the exact problem. And that's naturally where the sources start talking about a practical solution.
Okay, good. So what is the solution offered in the material to get around this non-resident issue?
The sources point directly towards using a professional registered agent service. They actually highlight a specific one, Neighborhood Parcel, as an example of a service that provides exactly what's needed.
A professional service, okay. How does that work?
Well, the main advantage, especially if you're not an MA, is they give you that required local physical presence. They have a real commercial office in Massachusetts. That meets the state's requirement for a physical street address. The sources even give the specific address for Neighborhood Parcel, 1215 Main St. in Tewksbury, MA.
1215 Main Street, Tewksbury. So they provide the mandatory address. What else makes this a good solution?
They have actual people, staff, at that location during business hours. They're ready to physically accept documents when they arrive. The sources really stress the reliability factor here. Compared to asking a friend or maybe an employee who might be out or busy or might move, a professional service is built for this.
Right. Reliability is key for those critical notices.
Definitely. And another big plus mentioned is privacy.
Privacy? How so?
When you use a service like this, you list their commercial address on your public state filings as the registered agent's address, not your home address. So your personal address stays off the public record associated with the business, which is, really valuable for keeping business and personal life separate.
That makes a lot of sense. You probably don't want your home address easily searchable on a state database tied to your company.
Exactly. And, crucially, they provide proactive compliance help. The materials say a good service will scan and securely forward any legal notice or official mail they receive for you, often the very same day it arrives.
Same day. That's fast.
Yes, and that immediate notification is vital. It directly addresses that risk we talked about, missing documents, facing default judgments because you didn't know.
So it plugs that hole completely.
It really mitigates that risk, yes.
Right.
The sources also mention flexible mail forwarding options. So if you run your business remotely or you travel a lot or live overseas, they can usually customize how they get your mail to you, scanned copies, physical mail forwarded weekly, whatever works.
Okay, flexible. And what about the cost? The sources hinted it was affordable compared to the alternatives.
Yes, they position it as a very cost-effective approach. The annual fee for a registered agent service is described as a small, predictable expense. Compare that to the potentially huge, unpredictable costs of non-compliant state fines, legal fees fighting a default judgment, losing your business's good standing, or even, dissolution. It's presented as a smart investment.
A small cost to avoid potentially massive problems.
Exactly. And one more practical point, Speed. If you're trying to get your MA business formed quickly, the sources note these services often have same-day activation through a simple online sign-up. This means you can get their agreement to act as your agent fast, get that required consent form, and move forward with your state filings without delay.
Okay, so it ticks a lot of boxes, provides the physical presence, ensures reliability for receiving documents, protects privacy, helps avoid huge penalties, and it's relatively quick and affordable. Based on the sources, who exactly needs to use a service like this in Massachusetts? Who does this requirement apply to?
It's pretty broad. The sources list basically anyone forming a new business entity in Massachusetts that requires state registration. So that's your new LLCs, your C-Corp, your S-Corp, and also nonprofits.
So pretty much anyone starting those common types of businesses.
Correct. It also applies if you have a business already set up in, say, California or Florida, and you want to legally operate or expand into Massachusetts. That's usually called registering as a foreign entity. And Massachusetts law requires those foreign entities to appoint a local registered agent, too.
Got it. So existing businesses expanding in. Anyone else?
Yes. Also, if you currently have a registered agent in MA, but they're no longer suitable, maybe they moved away, maybe you just can't rely on them anymore, the law says you have to replace them promptly with a valid agent. And the sources mention the types of clients who typically use these services: law firms, setting up entities for their clients, big out-of-state corporations coming into MA, real estate investors who use LLCs, purely remote or e-commerce businesses. It shows it's a pretty standard solution.
Right. Clearly a common need for anyone without a solid physical base there.
Now, there was also that other source material you included about mailbox services. It's interesting how it connects.
Yeah, the one talking about getting a real street address, not a P.O. box. How does that fit in?
Well, that core idea, needing a genuine physical street address, it's fundamental to both registered agent requirements and having a legitimate business mailing address. The fact that a service like Neighborhood Parcel offers a real staffed commercial address, that Tewksbury address, again, 1215 Main St., is what allows it to fulfill both roles. It can be your legally required registered agent address, and it can be your professional mailing address for regular business mail and packages.
Ah, so the same physical address infrastructure serves both purposes.
Exactly. And the process mentioned in that second source for setting up a mailbox service, things like needing to fill out USPS Form 1583, providing ID that just reinforces the legitimacy. It shows there are regulations around having a third party receive mail for you. It's not just some casual arrangement. It applies whether it's for your everyday business mail or for those critical legal documents going to your registered agent. There's accountability.
Okay, so getting that legitimate street address is kind of intertwined with meeting the registered agent requirement. They both depend on having that verifiable physical location with someone reliable there.
Precisely. It links the practical need for a business address with the legal mandate for an agent address.
And setting up the registered agent service itself, according to your sources, sounds pretty straightforward. They laid out like 3 steps.
Yeah, they presented it as a simple process. Step 1, just apply online, usually through a secure form on their website.
Okay, online application. Step 2.
Step 2 is they process it, confirm everything, and importantly, they can provide you with a signed consent form. Some state filings require you to include proof that your chosen agent has actually agreed to take on the role.
Right. The state wants proof they said yes. Makes sense. And the final step is making it official.
Yes. Step 3 is integrating their information into your actual state filing. So when you file your articles of organization for an LLC or articles of incorporation for a corporation, or if you're filing a change of agent form, you just list the service's name and their official Massachusetts address.
Which was 1215 Main St., Tewksbury, MA 01876.
Correct. The sources even included the phone number, 978-851-0199, which you sometimes need for the forms too. The main point they make is that this process is designed to be much, much easier than trying to figure out the requirement on your own, especially given all the potential risks we talked about if you don't have that reliable local presence.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive up. If you're listening and you're thinking about starting or running a business in Massachusetts, but you live somewhere else, what's the big takeaway from these sources? It seems really clear. Finding and using a registered agent service isn't just like ticking a box on a form. It's a critical strategic step. It's the practical answer to a strict legal rule. And it protects your business by making sure you get those crucial notices, keeps your home address private, and helps you stay in good standing with the state, avoiding some really nasty penalties.
Absolutely. And the emphasis in the sources on choosing a reliable, professional, local partner seems vital because, as we saw, the consequences of having an unreliable agent or no agent at all at a valid address, they're significant and very real. It's about safeguarding your business.
Well, this has been fascinating. We dove into what seems like a small detail, the registered agent, but it clearly has huge practical impacts, especially for non-resident business owners dealing with Massachusetts. We've seen the strict rule, the serious downsides of ignoring it, and how services like the one discussed offer a clear path to compliance, privacy, and just, well, peace of mind by being that essential local contact.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, based on this material. It's interesting how these seemingly old-school legal requirements, like needing a physical address for official mail even in our digital age, still fundamentally shape how businesses have to operate. And maybe consider how tackling these requirements proactively, like setting up your registered agent properly from the start, isn't just about compliance. It's actually part of building a stronger, more resilient foundation for your business.
Well said. Turning a potential roadblock into a secure building block. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep asking questions.